and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is DARYL Grove, and I'm joined by a man who is the best friend and podcast partner a man could ever have. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah,
I'm back.
You're doing the opening remarks while wrapped in a blanket.
Yeah. I'm a little cold. I've got a bit of a raspy voice. And obviously I haven't been on the show for, 2 weeks?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Thereabouts. And so I should explain my absence.
I mean, you don't need to put it quite in such a, I must explain my absence.
You have to do it at high school. I think you should have to do it on podcasts.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, maybe the abbreviated version would be good because I haven't, the best way I can explain it is, I haven't wanted to put your business in the streets, so I haven't wanted to say quite so much what's going on other than to say that, you're as okay as you can be, you're okay, but you're not great, so now you're here and you can do it yourself.
All right, so the very long story is I got that cancer diagnosis in January. The recent news is I had a bowel blockage because a tumour was blocking my bowel. So it's kind of a get Darryl into hospital, do some surgery on him kind of situation, right? So I got an ileostomy, which is where you get a bag. And I've been recovering from the surgery. And I'm kind of still recovering, but I was really desperate just to get back in the studio and do an episode with Taylor. So
yes.
I'm okay. I'm through the danger because it was dangerous when the bowel was blocked because things are supposed to move through your bowels.
Yep.
They're not just supposed to keep inflating, apparently. So that has been solved. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty lively with a microphone in front of me. And I'm good to continue also the clinical trial, which is
the key thing,
going
right?
on in Boston, which is the treatment I'm getting for the cancer.
Okay.
So there we are. That's me explained.
Okay. That's you explained. So you feel good, as good as you can at least. You're back wrapped in your blanket to help me answer those two questions.
Blanket is post-surgery blood thinners to stop any clots. Also makes you feel a bit cold.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes. And also the air conditioning in our building is centralized.
Yeah.
So we have low, medium, and high. Low is necessary given that it's still hot outside, but it isn't really forgiving to folks who are maybe slightly colder.
It's not. But I'm okay. I got my blanket.
All right.
I'm all good. And I've got 8 listener questions.
You do.
All submitted to totalsoccershow.com/questions.
You do. We've got many to get to. They are of varying degrees of difficulty in how we're going to answer them. The one first, I struggled with, you less so we'll go there.
Okay.
Billy Height asks, is Berhalter's system just too cerebral and complex for international play? You did a very good job of kind of breaking this question down to its basics in a way that I did not, which is probably why it was easier for you to answer than me.
Well, so the way I answer this is to not think about, is Berhalter doing a good job implementing it, this and that. Just take the question at face value. Is this system of possession soccer, positional play, we keep the ball, we disrupt the opposition and exploit openings, too cerebral and complex for international play? The answer is no, because we've seen other international teams do it. Right? Spain won 2008 Euros, 2010 World Cup, 2012 Euros, playing this style of play. The Dutch national team often plays this style of play. The Curaçao national team plays this style of play, right? It is not too complex for international play. It just depends what culture your players come from.
Okay. So you're saying that the tiny island nation of Curaçao, their players are more able to technically fulfill the requirements of this system than the U.S. players?
In theory, because Curaçao obviously Dutch territory, so many of those players are Dutch second division players and Dutch first division players, that they've come through the Dutch system because this positional play, possession play is essentially the Dutch style of soccer, right? So if you just grow up in this culture and this is how you're taught to play football, it's no way too cerebral and complex for international play. So the question then becomes, is it too cerebral and complex for a bunch of players that have never played this way before? And I'm glad Billy didn't ask that question because I don't know the answer.
I mean, I can give you my best answer, which is it shouldn't be, I don't think, because I take your point that yes, those players are schooled in the Dutch system, but it still seems to me like you should be able to, through practice and watching other teams play and practicing it yourself in training, be able to figure it out. And it still feels like we haven't quite moved or advanced in our ability to execute that game plan. So I do still have questions about that I take your point, but I still struggle with it a little bit at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and if we're going to think about it that way, I would argue that we are still in the learning phase, right, where Berhalter is trying to get this whole thing working like clockwork, and it's not quite there. But we often see little signs of it working, right? Throughout the Gold Cup, I remember us doing our reviews and having moments where we saw okay, this thing is working. In this moment, it worked. So I still preach the idea that even if it's not fully finished and it's not fully working just yet, at least give this thing a chance and see if it works out or not. And if we start World Cup qualifying and we're still not able to implement correctly and results are going against us, I think that might be the time when we have to say, okay, we had a full year to do this before we started playing international games for points, and we're in trouble now. This is maybe where we have to put a stop to it.
But there have been 2 games since that Gold Cup that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's worth remembering that neither one of those games were particularly soothing for the U.S. fan base. And so I don't necessarily disagree, but I still have those concerns about there's moments here and there where it seems like it's okay. But then against Mexico, I saw a lot more signs that maybe things were not working.
But I'd argue that the way Berhalter, so you did lots of interviews and talked to a lot of people about that game, right? You talked to Joe Lowry, Tenorio. That
and the Uruguay game, yeah.
Felipe Cardenas. Yeah. Really, honestly, I really enjoyed listening to those shows while I was in hospital. It was good entertainment.
Thank you.
But every time I heard an ad, I was like, I just made money. Didn't have to do anything.
That's good.
It's good to get all different perspectives. And I think the thing that a lot of people touched on was the idea that Berhalter used that game as a friendly to try and teach players how to do a certain thing, like playing out of the bat thing, at the expense of letting us be embarrassed against Mexico. And I feel like it's almost like you've got to, in a generous way, you could say you've got to let Berhalter experiment, let the team learn the hard way, and you will get our rewards in the long term.
One thing is,
our reward waits for us in World Cup qualifying.
Let's hope.
Or possibly in the CONCACAF Nations League.
Well, see, I guess, that's what I want to ask, though. And, maybe this is a conversation for another day. I mean that sincerely. Maybe this is a thing we can dedicate an episode to, is, I think I need a plan for you and me in terms of, when it is safe to say, okay, things are not working. Because I don't do well when things are nebulous and kind of, it could be this, it might be that, maybe it's this, maybe we are building that. That's not, but maybe. I think it's hard for me to continue to hear but we're building. Oh, but it's going in the right direction. It's been a year. So
I've got an easy way for you when points are on the line.
Okay.
I think that's it. I think CONCACAF Nations League, I know it's only Cuba and Canada. I mean, Canada are a decent-ish team, right? But you should expect that we're not experimenting, we're not learning, we're trying to win those points. World Cup qualifying, and just to be clear, assuming that we beat Canada and Cuba, then we'll have next June, we'll have the competitive CONCACAF Nations League final games, right?
Yeah.
It's been moved from March to June, by the way. So that's when there's no excuse for tinkering and messing around. And World Cup qualifying, because there's points, there's no excuse for tinkering and messing around. We might have to accept that Greg Berhalter's approach to friendlies does not match our approach to friendlies, in that he's willing to take a loss if he's teaching the players some sort of concept.
This is a concern that I articulated to one of the people that you listed that was on the show. But
can't remember which one?
I cannot. We talked about lots of different things.
It was a whirlwind of interviews.
It was. But isn't that a bit unrealistic, though, that expectation, to assume that, but in meaningful games, we'll definitely be able to do it? Don't you want to see a friendly where we absolutely show that we're capable of doing it, to then be all right,
but
now in that competitive game, we can?
But, think of the Jamaica games, right? Do you remember Jamaica friendly before the Gold Cup?
Yeah.
We tried something, looked horrible, got destroyed, played Jamaica in the Gold Cup, beat them really convincingly. It's probably the best performance of the whole Gold Cup.
Okay.
So I think, honestly, I would hold that as the example of Berhalter in friendlies versus Berhalter's US men's national team in friendlies versus Berhalter's US men's national team when points or progression through a tournament are on the line. And I'm really willing to give him that leeway and make that distinction, provided we don't start looking bad when actual points are on the line.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not.
That's my answer.
I am not as inclined to go along with that one, but for sake of argument,
if my voice was less raspy, would it be more convincing?
maybe that's the problem.
Maybe less. Maybe I'll be less convincing.
I really am. I think
I will perform Smelly Cat later.
Perfect. Maybe I've talked too much about Berhalter, or maybe I've talked too much about the national team, but I find myself very confused, and then slightly optimistic, and then very pessimistic, and it's a lot of whirlwind. And that's where this question threw me, is well, is it Berhalter who can't implement it, or is it the system that can't implement it? Is the players who don't know how to do it? Do some players and other players don't? And that's where you're right. If the question is just about the system, that makes it a bit more simplified. But as soon as you start to add in other factors, it gets a lot more complex for me.
Ready for another question?
Let's do that instead.
Okay, it's still with the US men's national team. Kit Wirtz asks, could Weston McKennie thrive at Arsenal? And Kit adds, in parentheses, which I always appreciate, I'm a huge Weston McKennie fan and a huge Arsenal fan. So Kit is essentially hoping this happens.
Yes.
Is it realistic for Weston McKennie to thrive at Arsenal?
Genuine question for you, Daryl, putting you on the spot. Who is the last player to thrive at Arsenal? Like, sincerely. Because I feel like it's maybe like Alexis Sanchez in his prime would be when it was like he's killing it with the national team. He comes in, he's like a lethal player for Arsenal. And I mean this, like, am I forgetting anybody? Would you say there's anybody more recently?
Aaron Ramsey?
You think?
Yeah.
Okay. But even then, that's a player that isn't really respected by like the ownership, and they don't give him a contract, and he leaves for free.
Well, yeah, but I think they would have liked to keep him.
Okay, all right. So maybe, but I feel like that's when they stumbled into. So I think, but I guess that is where my mindset is with this one. Is like, I don't know, because I'm not confident that a lot of Arsenal players thrive. I feel like there's a lot of up and down performances, and maybe that is kind of where Schalke are. So maybe that is where Weston McKennie is.
Well, let me give you my answer right now.
Sure.
Right now, because I think Weston McKennie is a wonderful potential future player, but right now a kind of inconsistent player, right? We've seen incredible performances from him where he's the guy that's just winning the ball off of everybody and then he's making the right pass every time. And you see other games where he's fouling people, he's getting frustrated, and he's making bad passes and giving the ball away. So my answer is essentially he's kind of a very Arsenal player in that, but not in a good way, in that he's super capable but very up and down and not that consistent right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Like Granit Xhaka has moments where you're like, wow, Granit Xhaka is like a supreme midfielder, and then Granit Xhaka has moments.
That we could have listed a couple of different players here.
Well, yeah, but you know what I'm saying. Then he has moments when he lunge tackles and gives away horrible fouls or hits passes that don't come off.
Yeah, I mean, David Luiz would like a word with you on that front, because sometimes he makes very good defensive plays, and then other times he concedes penalties and makes bad mistakes.
So there we go. Yeah.
So maybe he could be an
right
Arsenal player.
Right now, he thrives at Arsenal in terms of not the good version of Arsenal right now, the very up and down version of Arsenal.
So is this though that like we're not sure about Arsenal, or we're not sure about Weston McKennie to be a consistent performer? Because I do wonder, with the way Schalke's season went last season and the new manager coming in, they're trying to figure things out. It feels like McKennie is being asked to do a lot of different things for Schalke.
Right now, he's been asked to play in a two-man central midfield.
I mean, I've seen him be very far forward for Schalke and be like integral to the attack, and I have seen him sit off and try to make plays. I've seen him drift wide on occasion for Schalke. Like I think he, if not being asked to do stuff,
he's asked to be like an all-action midfielder essentially. So he has a central position, but he's got license to go charging around.
Then, like, do you think that is a thing that would work well at Arsenal? Though, is I guess what I'm saying is like would his current role with Schalke fit with Arsenal, or would it have to be an adjusted role to fit with what Arsenal are doing?
Ooh, so this is part of the problem of we don't really know what Arsenal are doing, right? This is the whole question under Unai Emery. What is the Emery Arsenal style? And it still hasn't fully emerged, so we can't really put our finger on it.
All right. So is this the second question in a row that we have to be like, we'll see?
Maybe it is. Yeah, until Arsenal figure themselves out. Yeah. And until... Well, here's the big thing. I also want to think of this bigger picture in terms of almost like what's Weston McKennie's future? What's Weston McKennie's ceiling? I honestly think if he develops into the player we're hoping he's going to become... Remember, he's only 20, right? And I think his youth and relative inexperience, he's played like 50 Bundesliga games, explains his inconsistency. I think 3-4 years, there's a chance that McKennie really is that player that is always winning the ball everywhere and then is always making the sort of smart pass that no one else saw and is so competitive in midfield that he's like unstoppable. I honestly think he could be a sort of American version of Arturo Vidal. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying as good, but similar in that he can take over a game in that way in a few years' time.
So 3 to 4 years from now, Weston McKennie, could potentially thrive at Arsenal. Okay, that's what you're going to go with?
There we go.
All right.
Yes, there we go.
Fair.
And I actually just looked it up on my phone. Schalke are playing right now. Okay. They're playing the Friday night game in the Bundesliga, and they're winning 1-0 against Mainz. And they're already in the top half of the Bundesliga. I think they were 6th before, because I was checking earlier today. McKennie's starting. I think Schalke under David Wagner and with McKennie playing central midfield, they're kind of in a good place. So maybe he's okay at Schalke for a little while now that Schalke aren't terrible.
All right.
Do you know what I mean? Because it used to be rough to watch Schalke. It's not so rough to watch Schalke anymore.
Yes. But so I think to give a more like immediate answer to Kit's question, I would say that no, I don't think he can thrive right now. It wouldn't
be a good move for him right now at all.
No, because I think the style that Arsenal want to play and then also the style that they are playing means that it's like not necessarily what he can do right now.
Do you know what Arsenal want to do?
No, but I mean, I would say that like historically the way Arsenal play combined with things I have seen from Unai Emery when they're playing at their best, I don't think that suits Weston McKennie right now. I think he would definitely be all action all over the place. You would never fault him for trying. That would never be a criticism against him. But I also think it would be bad for him in the sense that there would be those performances, as you've said, where it's maybe he gets sent off for 2 yellow cards, or maybe Arsenal just have a bad day and everybody plays poorly. Yeah. But that doesn't put him in a position to, I think, perform to that next level. And on top of that, I think the Premier League is a different entity. It's a different animal. It's a thing he has no experience with. That takes time.
Because here's what would happen. If he went to Arsenal right now, he'd be behind Lucas Torreira. He'd be behind Gendouzi. He'd be behind Xhaka. Ceballos is always in that midfield. Do you know what I mean? He would struggle to start for Arsenal. He's starting for Schalke as we record this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's no need for him to try and thrive at Arsenal just yet. So maybe, Kit, be patient. Maybe it'll happen in the future. Give it a few years.
But if you would like to see Weston McKennie playing for Schalke, but you maybe aren't sure how you could possibly do that, Daryl, maybe today's sponsor could help you out?
You should do what I do and use Fubo.
That makes sense.
I moved house this week.
Yep.
I cut the cord. I no longer have a named cable provider. I use my internet and I use Fubo because it gives me access to all the soccers that I could want.
All the soccers that you could want.
Yesterday I watched Wolves versus Braga in the Europa League on Univision Deportes.
That's the dream right there. How'd you feel about that one?
I mean, I felt good going in. They lost 1-0. I felt bad coming out.
All right.
That's not Fubo's fault.
It's not Fubo's fault.
I mean, the stream was perfect.
I mean, if they wanted to be the best possible stream, they would have found a way for your team to win, to make you happy.
Digitally editing Raul Jimenez scoring an equalizer.
It's North Korean Fubo does that, I believe. Regular Fubo does not, but regular Fubo does offer you things like 72-hour rewatch. So if you've missed a game, you missed a show that you wanted to watch, it is there on demand for 72 hours after it was originally broadcast. Then obviously they have the cloud DVR, so that
500 hours.
Which
I've tried filling it and I can't even fill it.
I mean, I think if you record everything, go
I'm a
for
DVR.
it. But I think it's important there because there are certain channels that don't allow you to fast forward when you're rewatching on demand, which can be problematic if, say, you're wanting to watch the most important moments of a 90-minute soccer game and you can't fast forward. That doesn't necessarily help as much as, say, DVRing it, and then you can fast forward all the way through. So it kind of gives you both options of, like, you can keep your DVR like less cluttered because you have the on-demand feature, but at the same time you can DVR then the most important things so that you can definitely watch them and watch them how you want to watch them.
And it also gives you a nice calendar, right? You can essentially click sports, click soccer, and it shows you the soccer calendar. Here's all the games you can watch today, and you can like click through to tomorrow, and it just lists all the games that are on all the channels they've got. And we're talking Fox Sports 1 and 2, Fox Soccer Plus, beIN Sports, like all kind. There's Univision is where I get a lot of stuff from. So much soccer coming at you.
And one thing we don't talk about as often, but like because it maybe seems obvious, but I would mention is that like it is a very portable thing that you can have it on any number of your devices, on your laptop, on your iPad, on your phone, on your TV.
I have it on my Apple TV.
And so you can be watching a game on your Apple TV, but then if I want to go, like we only have the one TV in the house upstairs, so if I want to go downstairs and do some dishes, I bring my phone, open up the Fubo app, find that game, set it up, and now I'm watching the game while doing dishes. And you can kind of move it around and watch the same thing with different devices in different locations.
And I find that all that stuff helpful for us as the Total Soccer Show, because often we need to like rewatch a goal, right? And the easy way to do it now is we just open up Fubo, go to that game, we know what minute it is, we just scroll through it. We're not forced to watch any ads for insurance or anything, because you can just scroll through and you just watch the goal. It's so much soccer at your fingertips. It is absolutely incredible.
So if people would like to try Fubo, if they want to learn more about Fubo, Daryl, what can they do? How can they do it?
We get 10% off your first 2 months. If you go to and we'll get the credit for you signing up.
That would be good.
If you go to, not in an affiliate kind of way, but just they'll know that we sent you. FuboTV.com/TSS. FuboTV.com/TSS, and you'll get 10% off your first 2 months. And I really guarantee you'll be happy with the service.
You guarantee?
Well, it's never dropped. Here's the thing. You know, some streaming, you always think, oh, but do I trust it? Never, ever dropped for me. It's been absolutely perfect and crystal clear.
Let's do this. Our friends the Cooligans have a show on Fubo TV.
Oh, they do,
if you are not happy with Fubo TV, ask the Cooligans to give you your money back.
There we go.
Solved.
Perfect.
There we are. So thank you very much to Fubo for sponsoring today's episode. More listener questions, Daryl. The next one comes from Matthew Graham. Would you like to ask or would you like to answer?
I feel like I'd like to save my voice as much as possible.
Okay. We always talk about American players going to Europe to challenge themselves. Why don't we talk more about American coaches going to Europe to challenge themselves? I should have emphasized coaches, not American. Like Jesse Marsch is doing right now and Bob Bradley did previously. And would a good showing in the Champions League this year make Jesse Marsch the most accomplished American club coach of all time?
The answer to why don't we talk more about American coaches going to Europe to challenge themselves is it never really felt realistic.
Nope.
It never felt possible, right? Only Bob Bradley in terms of high-end, like, say, Premier League and second division in France with Le Havre.
Yep.
So Swansea and Le Havre.
Yep.
We had Greg Hammerby.
I mean, and like Norway with where was Bob Bradley in Norway? Stabæk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we had Greg Berhalter with Hammerby.
I think you guys.
I called him Greg Hammerby.
That's what I thought. All right, cool.
I know what I did. I
liked it though.
So Greg Hammerby in the second division. We had that going on. There were some other I looked through did a deep Google of trying to find various American coaches. There were some random coaches here and there, but in terms of high profile coaches, there weren't any, so it never felt possible.
It's why I always try to claim David Wagner as being American and not German American or German.
He's in my notes here for the answer, I've got, does David Wagner count?
Probably not.
He doesn't, right? Because even though he's American, he played for the US, he came up through the German system. I'm sure he considers himself a German coach, right? So it's really not the same thing. Yeah.
And so to go a little deeper on Matthew's question, I would say a big part of it is because I don't think there is much respect for American coaches. And I don't mean that in a blanket statement of Europe hates America. It's just more, I think you have to have intermediate steps. You have to be a coach in Norway, or you have to coach in the French second division in order to get a shot, and even a medium tier club to then maybe if you succeed there, you get a shot at a slightly larger and slightly larger.
Yeah.
But there's not quite the faith, I think, in U.S. coaching that there is in U.S. players. And even then, we talk often about how maybe European teams are slightly hesitant to take American players because they're tactically behind, or they don't, grow up with the system, and so you can always count on them to run and work, but maybe not necessarily execute the game plan. And I think if the people asking the Americans to execute that game plan, if the player isn't being trusted, then probably the coach also not as trusted.
And Jesse Marsch at Red Bull Salzburg, he's essentially circumvented the system where European clubs don't want American coaches by going through the Red Bull system, right? So you got New York Red Bull, then he was RB Leipzig assistant coach, and then Red Bull Salzburg head coach.
And if people missed...
He's gone through that Red Bull system, now he's the head coach of an Austrian Bundesliga team.
And if people missed the Bundesliga preview show with Matt Herman, worth noting, I kind of threw it out there, do you think maybe we see Jesse Marsch one day coaching Leipzig, as a very hopeful, optimistic, and he's like, yeah, probably. Because Nagelsmann's young.
This is the funnel, right? Yeah. This is their system. This is how they do it.
So I think that would be my answer, actually, that if Jesse Marsch continues to go through the ranks and goes to Leipzig, and maybe that's a bit more of a competitive Champions League team, then maybe. But to the second question of would that make him the most accomplished American coach of all time? No, because Bruce Arena is. And that's the frustrating reality
American
for me.
Club coach of all time.
Even so, I still think it's Bruce Arena.
Just because Bruce Arena won a bunch of MLS Cups and he did nothing in Europe?
Yeah, what has Jesse Marsch done?
He's the only American to coach in the Champions League.
Yeah.
And he's already the only American to win a Champions League game. Red Bull Salzburg beat Genk last week 6-2.
And I have a hard time saying that that one game, and then I take Matthew's point that would a decent run in the Champions League do that? It still for me is no, because then you're still you've managed one team for half a season. That doesn't really do it for me. I understand where the question is coming from, but no, I think it's probably, if you're looking at decorated coaches who've won multiple things with multiple teams, it is probably Bruce Arena, even though I hate that that's the answer.
What if Jesse Marsch literally takes Red Bull Salzburg through to the knockout rounds of the Champions League and wins a round of 16 game?
So I was out of town and have not paid as much attention to the Champions League as I should. Who's in their group?
So it's Genk, whom they just beat 6-2, and then it's Liverpool and Napoli.
So to get past those latter two, that would be a pretty monumental achievement.
Yeah. You would build him a monument.
I still
a Marsch monument.
Sure, but I still don't know if I would anoint him that, because it is strange to me to say he made it into the knockout stages of a competition. Yes, it's the Champions League. Yes, no one else has ever done that before.
It would also be an upset, right? To get Salzburg that far is an achievement for any coach.
That's true. Yeah. But does that make them? It's an achievement. Does that make them the most decorated, the best club coach? I don't know. I have a hard time making that jump right there.
Okay, so we have a Bruce Arena stand.
No, we certainly do not. As I said, I do not like that I have to say it's Bruce Arena, but right now it's Bruce Arena because, again, decorated. What does that mean? Okay,
how about if we take Bruce Arena out of it and rephrase Matthew's questions a little bit as, would it make him the...
So he didn't say decorated, he said accomplished.
The most accomplished American coach to coach in Europe.
Oh, yeah, I mean, 100%. He already
would,
is.
right? Just
I think he already is.
Competition.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Because even Bob Bradley...
one Champions League win makes him the most successful American coach in Europe.
Yes, I think so. Because even Bob Bradley, let's remove Swansea. We'll go back to them in a second. But like it was coaching in like Scandinavia, then getting the job in the French second division, and we were hoping maybe that leads to something. And then he ends up getting the Swansea gig. That does not go well. It goes historically bad. And I think there are arguments to be made about why he gets the Swansea job, about connections to American ownership, and then how there's not much backing there and it doesn't go well. And players have argued he was out of his depth and he used the wrong terms. Make of that what you will. But I think he would be the only other one that comes to mind for me because I do think Bob Bradley's a very good manager, but that it's sort of like Scandinavia, French second division, and then like failing at Swansea versus Jesse Marsch going in and like the Bundesliga is a step up over the first two like leagues where Bob Bradley managed. So he's already doing well there. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, over the French second division and Scandinavia. Yes, Norway, I should say. And then, so I think that already puts him in a different category. And then from there to, be in the Champions League to win that game, to make a run potentially, that probably moves him up there, I think
it's just worth being excited about, right? It's just, for me, Red Bull Salzburg is a team I cared zero about last year. I am now really interested in what they do.
Yes.
I'm especially interested to see Red Bull Salzburg and Jesse Marsch against Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool.
And I need him to do well because I want the answer to not be Bruce Arena.
All right, you ready for the next question?
Sure.
It's from Tanner Hildeman. Tanner Hildeman wants to know, how much do the roles of the two centre-backs in a back four differ? For example, do managers tend to prioritise one with building and the other to more stay at home? So the second part, Tanner's talking about centre-backs with the ball, right? But I want to talk defensively as well, if you don't mind. So how much do the roles of the two centre-backs in a back four differ? Are they both just doing the same job, or are they sort of different defined roles?
I mean, I think the like obvious answer there is it depends on the manager, because if the manager wants to be a possession team, then they're not going to have one who like is the big gigantic guy who wins the ball, and then the other one is the only one who can play with the ball at his feet.
Like Man City don't have like John Stones and then some clogger.
Exactly. Clogger is a great term. Thank you for that. But I think, as with anything,
I'm just remembering what people have called me throughout my career.
Never, I would never call you that. But I think, as with anything, you kind of build your players around, you build your team around like strengths of your players and then like try to cover their vulnerabilities. So if you've got a player who is exceptionally good and maybe a little bit faster when it comes to exceptionally good at man marking and also maybe a little bit faster, that's going to be the one who tracks the number 9 playmaker if you want somebody doing like 1v1 defending, whereas maybe your taller, slightly slower one is going to be the one who deals with like long ball threats. Like I do think you can structure your center backs to kind of prioritize their strengths and play to those strengths and try to also like at the same time hide their vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and I've seen teams do that. You'll have like one centre back will be responsible for going and challenging for the ball. Say there's a longish ball come in, one centre back goes and challenges for the ball, another one sweeps up behind, right? Yeah. And it's based on their strengths, right? One has the aerial ability, one is maybe faster at sweeping up in behind and is good at tracking down loose balls. That makes sense as a partnership, right?
Yeah.
But I do think we're getting to a stage where if you look at like Liverpool with Joel Matip and Virgil van Dijk, I feel like they're both equally capable of doing both. So you'll see strikers like maybe try and stick on Matip and he'll beat them to the ball and Van Dijk will cover him behind. If they go to Van Dijk will beat them to the ball and Matip can cover him behind. Like, so the ultimate thing is to get yourself a pair of centre-backs who both can do both.
Just to clarify, are you saying, I don't think you are, but I feel like it kind of sounded that way. Are you saying Matip and Virgil van Dijk are like equally as good?
I think it's pretty close. Yeah.
Really?
If you watch them, it's often because they look kind of similar in a way, right? And you can get them confused when you're watching casually. I'm often like, "Wow, Van Dijk's unbeatable," and I'm like, "Oh, that was Joel Matip."
Oh, okay, all right. I wouldn't put them in the same category. I think Virgil van Dijk is the best center back in the world, and so for me,
I'm not gonna argue.
I say, how
that.
dare you?
Yeah,
I say, how dare you on behalf of Liverpool
I'm not disagreeing with that, but what I'm saying is like it's not like Van Dijk does one thing and he's covering for Matip not being able to do a certain thing.
Yeah.
There's no weakness that's having to be covered by either one because they can both attack the ball, they can both win it high, and they can both sweep up in behind.
Yeah. I think the other thing that comes
and they can both carry it out of the back. I'd say Van Dijk a little more, but Matip's not unskillful when he brings the ball out of the back.
Do you think that is the luxury of wealthy, historically successful teams that like not even at club level, but like Spain, I feel like have a wealth of center backs who can play with the ball at their feet. Yeah. Whereas going back to it, like the US, maybe fewer of those. And so maybe that is where we do see a little bit like variability in what the United States is trying to do. I'm not even saying that's the case. I'm just asking you, like, do you think that is a luxury of very good teams that they can then go out and buy and have players available who can do everything that they're being asked to do?
Definitely. I think it's more common to have one player wins the ball, one player sweeps. Right, as the strengths, because it's just hard to get two that can do both.
That is fair.
Get you a pair that can do both. And then you'll win the Champions League.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think that, like at the end of the day, though, if you want to kind of differentiate, you will occasionally see, that guy keeps winning everything in the air, or that guy keeps winning everything on the ground. Like, I think they're playing to their strengths.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Any more on this question?
I think that's about it for me.
Feel good about it? Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to something else I feel good about.
All right.
Today's sponsor is Away Days, awaydaysfootball.com. If you're a long-time Total Soccer Show listener, you have heard of Away Days.
You certainly have, and you certainly should have, because they offer many different interesting and exciting products, but obviously the one that we always go back to is the mystery kit. Daryl,
never heard of it.
Can you explain the mystery kit, even though you've never heard of it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you.
So the very basic mystery kit is you pay $25 and you get a mystery kit.
Mm-hmm.
As in,
that makes sense.
You don't know what it's going to be.
You don't.
It comes in a package, you open it up, and you find out what jersey of a soccer team from around the world that you've got. Mm-hmm. It won't be Real Madrid, it won't be Arsenal, it won't be Manchester United. It will be Panathinaikos or Real Oviedo or like a Japanese second division team or an Icelandic team or an English championship team. It could be absolutely any team in the world.
It could be. I think sometimes you'll get like bigger teams as options, not with the mystery kits, but they do have other like bigger teams and different kind of like campaigns they'll do. But a lot of times, like I saw one recently where it was like you can get an Eden Hazard Chelsea jersey, a Romelu Lukaku Manchester United jersey, and it was like, I see what has happened here. So those are occasionally options. But I think the other thing that is an option for our listeners is to go to Twitter and subscribe or follow Away Days, because there's also lots of different campaigns they do where they'll give away jerseys, they'll give away tickets. They'll just kind of do different things to engage the soccer community.
They're a really creative company in terms of making that happen.
I can't believe they haven't done a partnership with Ford Madison yet. We should probably make them connect. That's how good those two brands are together.
So as well as the regular mystery kit, there's the mystery kit gift subscription, which is a 3-month subscription for $75. You can give that to someone, and it will obviously it's the gift that keeps on giving. There's the Women's World Cup mystery kit, which is women's sizes, Women's World Cup mystery kit, $50, and the 2018-19 mystery kit, where you pay $40 and you get a 2018/19 jersey. I'm assuming that may be the Eden Hazard / Romelu Lukaku Chelsea Man United jerseys.
That's possible.
You were mentioning.
That's possible. But what if I don't want to necessarily pay full price for those things, Daryl? What if I wanted to pay like 10% less than full price?
You could pay 15% less.
15? Madness.
15% less if you use the discount code.
I would have gone for 11, but 15 is fine.
Well, that's why I do the negotiating for the Total Soccer Show. TSS. TSS is 90% the discount off. Code for 15% off at awaydaysfootball.com. The link will be in the show notes.
One more time, that's awaydaysfootball.com for 15% off. Thank you very much to our friends, our longtime friends at Away Days for sponsoring today's show. More questions, Daryl. What next?
My document is loading up.
All right. Then I will ask you. Nick Becker asks,
there we go.
Can you share what it's like to play soccer with some of the notable figures you've had an opportunity to play against? Nick asks because you noted a couple weeks ago that you played with Stu Holden. Is a pro like that still clearly the best player around, and are there some sneaky good reporters out there? So
this is mostly because we played in some what I call like casual friendly media games.
Yes.
Right? Where some members of the media pull in other members, and it happens that some members of the media happen to be ex-players, right? Like Stu Holden.
We should add that there are like official media games for like All-Star.
Oh, it's not one of those.
Yeah, it's not quite that. It's more like the ones in Atlanta, like our friend George Qureshi of The Athletic.
It's actually mostly George, right?
It's mostly George organizes these things. Yes. George now that you mention it, yes.
George puts this together and gets everybody. It's got kind of a buzz about it in terms of he knows enough people and gets everybody in there.
Yeah.
That it really feels like an event every time.
Yeah, it does. And so in there, we've played against a few ex-pros. Stu Holden, I would say, was lights out the best player. Like he came in, and not only was he the best player himself, but also you could see everybody else sort of be like, okay, now Holden's here. I got to elevate a little bit more. Yeah. And suddenly other ex-pros who maybe had been taking it like 40 or 50% were at a higher percentage from then on.
So in terms of the what the experience is like to play against players like that, for me, it's just magnificent to see these players in action. It's
a Stu Holden in the wild.
But like in a tangible way, right? Like I've seen a lot of professional soccer live, but in terms of like Bobby Warshaw, like Bobby Warshaw receives the ball and you try to get it off of him. Yep. So just to have the experience of trying to get it off of him, you can't do that. If you try and do that in a professional game, the security would escort you out of the ground, right?
Yeah.
You'd be a pitch invader.
Yeah, you probably can't do that.
Yeah. So just to have that feeling and to realize how good pro and ex-pro players are at little things like shielding the ball is mind-blowing to me.
It's mind-blowing to me. Like Bobby, as an example, is one who plays like technically pretty much perfect soccer. Like when we do these pickup games,
smooth, right?
He plays very simple, but a big part of that is because he's also like organizing and conducting.
Yeah.
And Bobby, because
he's a pointer, isn't he?
He is, but like as an example, my sister-in-law, like she likes to play like drinking games, but she's also like competitive with them. But I am also a very competitive person, and I enjoy having that person who's a little bit more competitive than me, so I don't have to be that person. That is Bobby. Bobby will happily be the one who's like, okay, we got to bring it together. We lost these last 2 games. This time we're playing a 2-3-2, and we're going to do this, and we're going to try that. And like, I kind of enjoy that because the structure does, I think, help you play better, but it also kind of is like, okay, people are taking it seriously. I want to take it a little bit seriously too. I like that aspect of it.
And then the other part of the experience is occasionally you do get lucky and tackle an ex-pro.
You do.
And you kind of feel like, like you try and stay cool, but afterwards I'm like, wow, I tackled an ex-pro.
Yeah.
That's not so bad.
I feel like this is the most name-droppy we've ever been, but it's the question,
I'm
so I'm
trying
fine
not
with it.
to be, but...
Yeah, I think I had one where I, like, maybe got it off Heath Pierce, and that was my, like, I've done it, and then I made the fatal mistake of, like, I've got the ball, and then he won the ball right back off me.
You mean former U.S. men's national team left back?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm not trying, again, and then he immediately won it back, and I think also embarrassed me
Well, I think that's
times.
an example of him being, like, he's playing kind of casual, he's not too worried about it. Oh, I lost the ball, and he's like,
now you're
that guy's
now
not
you're
taking
mine.
the ball off me, I'm Heath Pierce, I'm coming to get that.
Enjoy going into the wall. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Heath is lovely.
To the second part of the question from Nick, maybe, are there some sneaky good reporters out there? Which I assume means, are there some media people who are actually good at soccer? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of those people is George Qureshi, the aforementioned.
Qureshi's good, right?
That dude is one of those sneaky, like, he's like skinny and his frame is a little bit slight.
Yeah.
He is like Mickey from Snatch. Like he is harder than a coffin nail, I would say is how I would describe George, that he is one who if you go into a 50-50 challenge with, he will win it and you might feel it a little bit.
And he's energetic, right? Qureshi's always everywhere. All over the field. I would
he
also
plays
highlight,
like one of his Labradoodles.
He does.
Yes.
I would also highlight Felipe Cardenas.
Yep.
I struggle to tell the difference between a professional player and Felipe Cardenas.
Yeah.
He must have played college at least.
I would assume.
Yeah.
Or he's just got like the Colombianness flowing through him. Yes. Another one
Maybe
who
all Colombians are at least that good.
Yeah,
maybe he's the worst player in Colombia.
But is it interesting?
That's why he had to leave.
It's interesting because I don't disagree with you. That's probably it. You have to be. Yeah, you get voted
Valderrama
out.
said no, you must leave.
But look, it is interesting to me that with a lot of these guys, it's not about like maybe this is obvious, but it's not that they like are rouletting over everybody and megging everybody. It's just that they do everything very simply, even the very complicated stuff. And that's what I would say is like Felipe for me is a guy who you're not going to see him do 7 step overs. Stu Holden didn't do 7 step overs when we were playing. He did a few roulettes here and there, but it's more about how easily they do things that take me 2 seconds to kind of think and figure out and know how to do. That 2 seconds is a lifetime versus them just doing it instinctively and being able to spot through balls.
It's the speed of play, right? It's the speed of play.
Mm-hmm. And
it's impossible to match.
And there is nothing. Sorry for stepping on that, but there's like nothing worse as well than like seeing that ex-pro be like, you were supposed to make that run and you didn't. Like you can see them open up and then you realize like, oh, I was supposed to be running into that space, wasn't I? I didn't do it. And they turn around and play it the other way.
I've disappointed Bobby many times.
Yes.
I also want to highlight Henry Bushnell. Do you remember we played Nicole Hack, Chicago Fire, organised the pickup game in Chicago for us?
That's right.
Henry came out and played. He is really good. He is all over the place.
He is.
Yeah.
All right. You will get into arguments with me. I kind of forgot that. Like he was that one.
Because we only played with him the once, right? Whereas the other guys we played.
Well, it's also because it was like 140,000 degrees, and we were playing on a turf field in the middle of like Chicago, which itself is not like helpful when it comes to kind of removing the heat. And yet he was one of those obnoxious people who just kept running the whole time at 100%. It was like, how are you doing this? Why are you so fit? Stop it.
Too much running, Henry.
Yeah.
Stop being so youthful.
Not enough hangover from Henry. Whereas I think maybe we were sporting a couple of those.
And the last guy I would just remember, Paul Tenorio has really good feet.
He does.
Yeah.
He does. Paul Tenorio is sneaky good. Were you surprised by how much better Andrew Wiebe was than David Goss?
They were both pretty good, actually.
Yeah, Andrew Wiebe just a far superior player to David Goss. I just want to make sure I hear from David about this. That's all. Just trying to secure that one.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Another guy.
Oh, by the way, I meg David Goss. You can hear more about that later.
I feel like we should wrap this up soon, so it's not too self-indulgent. Did you meg David Goss?
I'll let him answer that one.
All right.
He claims the ball went out of bounds.
I think a really interesting player who we've played with a lot, Christian Polanco.
Yep.
Because he came to it late in life and he sort of learned to play soccer somewhat recently. And he uses these media like pickup games as a way to like train and test himself and try certain things. And he'll I hope he won't mind us sharing this, but he'll check in with us afterwards and say, hey guys, did you notice me being any better or worse at this or that than last time? And he's really open to feedback, and it's actually fascinating to watch an adult man be open to hearing those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not be pretentious and precious about it.
Yeah. So well done, Christian.
Yeah.
Well done for requesting feedback and watching tape. I don't know if they film, but I feel like maybe he does film and then goes back and analyzes his performances and learns from it. He's a tactical genius.
They should do that with their podcast.
Also that.
Oh, shout out to the Cooligans. We love you guys. I think that answers Nick's question.
I hope so. Mm-hmm.
And we weren't too self-indulgent?
We probably were pretty self-indulgent. But also, it is a thing that, like...
Oh, I forgot to say, every time we do this, I'm the best player on the field the whole time.
Yeah, that checks out.
Yeah.
You were out there running around despite having lost weight due to the cancer. You were still doing your best to hang.
That was not my best performance.
Yeah, this is Daryl, though. Daryl is like, we had a friend who's had a similar procedure to you, and he was like, I didn't move from my house for 2 months when I got home.
Yeah.
And here's Daryl sitting in the office 3 days after getting released from the hospital.
Right.
So there you go. It comes as no surprise then that Daryl's out there running around, even if maybe he's not feeling the best.
Almost blocking Stu Holden passes.
Yeah. I'm actually really happy, though, that we got this question, and you did almost block a Stu Holden pass, just because I think we both feel... I know this is ludicrous to say, having had the conversation we've just had, but I think you and I both sort of feel awkward about being like, look, we're playing with Stu Holden. We got to hang out with this guy. We got to do this. And so, I'll post things occasionally to Instagram where, but the photo that I posted of us with, Stu Holden and Heath Pierce and the Cooligans and other people, it was just a sort of this is such a weirdly amazing moment because this is not a thing that I ever thought was going to be a possibility for you and me.
Yeah.
That, suddenly
it's happened the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Where we've sort of got to know people.
But I don't want to then spend all my time being like, we got to hang out with this. We got to do this. We got to do this. So I'm happy that this question came up. But I think it's also why I then got really excited to talk about all the different people we get to play soccer with. So I apologize, but I also don't apologize.
Should we move on to the next question?
Sure.
Okay, it comes from Michael Hastings-Black.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Hastings-Black wants to know, given the consistent frailty of John Bubble Wrap Brooks, which is a nickname that Michael has given him, why is John Brooks actually worth calling into camp?
Because when he's fit, I think he's still our best center back. It's the hard thing is that then, but when is he fit? And why isn't he fit for the U.S. more? And, he doesn't get called in a lot of the time because he isn't fit. And so, I take Michael's question. It makes sense to me why you would ask it. It is the case that when I see him play for Wolfsburg, I see an incredibly good center back who's good on the ball, who can organize a defense, who can win everything in the air, who's good on set pieces.
He is the best in the air that we've got. He is the best at playing the ball out of the back that we've got. He's the best at hitting line-breaking passes.
Yep.
He's the best centre-back at hitting big diagonal passes. He is better than anyone else we've got.
He is. And I would add, I think sometimes with John Brooks, because... he's German-American, because he has an American serviceman father. I think sometimes it gets wrapped into the Jimmy Chandler, maybe he doesn't quite want to play for the U.S. Maybe it's he's sort of over it now. He wants to focus on his club career. And I just always, because I've seen that written, I've seen that debated.
But he's also injured for his club at the same time, right?
That's true.
So that's how we know it's a real injury.
But also, never forget his reaction to when he scored in that World Cup. Yes. How much that meant to him and how,
remember when we played in World Cups?
Yeah, that was fun, right? But, remember how, he almost, he almost passed out from his level of I can't believe this just happened to me. He just runs over and lays down.
This is the winner against Ghana.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
And it clearly meant a lot to him, not just to score in a World Cup, but to score for the United States in a World Cup. And so I think he still very much is committed to the U.S., wants to play for the United States. It just he's paid money by his club team, and that is where his priority is. And I think if you're looking at an early season game or an early season campaign in the Bundesliga versus some friendlies with the national team where you're sort of carrying a knock, you're not going to want to potentially risk that and miss the season for a friendly.
And I also think, so it was against Mexico, right, where he pulled out probably not long before kickoff because there was a bit of confusion with a groin pull. And from what I understand, it was not a full injury, but a sign that something was about to happen. So it was all right, we just won't play him. I think it's the right move. I think with an injury-prone player, if there's a warning sign, if there's kind of a klaxon going off, you listen to the klaxon and you don't send him out there to get a full groin injury.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah. I would agree with that. So
it's going to be about how we manage it going forward, right? Do we, when you write down your best 11, do you put John Brooks in it? When you're Greg Berhalter making plans for the Nations League, do you assume John Brooks is playing? And I feel like the answer might be to not assume that John Brooks is playing. Because statistically, he's probably not. So
what do you mean then? So how do you, when you're building a roster, do you just assume it's somebody else until he's there and then you're pleasantly surprised? Maybe that's it. Maybe maybe we just stumbled upon it, which is that we still have this idea that he's our best center back, which I think he is because he is. So then we have this idea he's going to be there automatically. And maybe we take it for granted or assume it's going to be the case. And so when we're not, there's that level of disappointment. And maybe if we just assume he's not going to be there and then he actually starts, then we're just excited.
Just be pleasantly surprised when he shows up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Such is the state of U.S. soccer. Hooray! More questions.
Okay.
Daryl, John Martin asks, which national team is the most disliked by other nations? I thought about this question more than any other question, and I kept ruling people out, and eventually I was like, oh, yeah, that's the answer. So I do think I have a definitive answer.
Oh, so I struggled to come up with an answer because even though I tried really hard, I kept coming to the idea that there are rivalries between nations, but there's not one country that's hated by everybody. You think there is?
I can't tell if you're being intentionally leading up to it or if you actually mean this.
All right, so hold your answer there. It sounds like you have something really definitive.
Yeah.
I came up with two possible answers.
Yeah.
One is in Europe, it's maybe Germany, because so many teams see them as a rival, like England see them as a rival, Netherlands see them as a rival, France see them as a rival.
Yeah, okay.
And it's not just because Germany have been so good and like they've beaten teams so much. Some of it is also World War II related. There's just leftover feelings from that bleeds into the rivalry. So in terms of just having lots of teams that see them as their nemesis, it could be Germany.
I mean, I would happily go back in time.
Is your answer the USA?
No. Okay. I would happily go back in time to the 70s to watch the Dutch play the Germans when World War II is still recent enough but not so recent, and just to see the level of tension and dislike there would be very interesting. No, my friend.
Well, let me before you give your answer, I thought maybe it could be the USA because we seem to get a lot of abuse whenever we go south, right? So whether we go to Mexico or we go down to Central America, in World Cup qualifying. When we go to Trinidad, we're not popular. And I wonder if it's because the US is so culturally different to all those Central American teams that we are not always particularly welcomed, that maybe it's the USA.
Do you mean aside from the time that we had two different political policies about how we were allowed to intervene in Latin and Central American affairs also, without anybody else saying anything? That US, probably is a big part of why...
There's US geopolitical history there as well.
It's why Canada doesn't hate us as much as everybody else.
Yeah, and why other countries don't hate Canada.
Yeah, that too. But I just mean more so we have less of a history of interfering in Canadian affairs whenever it benefits us economically versus in Central and South America. So, and I think the other thing is that the United States isn't good enough, and I think you have to have at least some threat level when it comes to your actual on-field performance for people to really dislike you. Versus
we do against Guatemala and Honduras.
Yeah, but I'm saying when we go to the Ivory Coast, I don't know if we play the Ivory Coast, I don't know if there's but they're also a really good team and I hate them for that reason too. Yeah. Whereas you have to have a little bit of the history.
Look out for Corey Bad.
And you have to have that threat. I think that if you're talking about a team that people don't like for a number of reasons, the answer is England.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
I thought people are excited to come to the home of football and play at Wembley.
There we go. Right there. That's part of the reason why. I think this particular iteration of the England national team is more likable than any English team has been in a very long time. Maybe since 90? Or maybe 94? I don't know. But
96 was the last Liverpool England team.
But I think in terms of look at it from a team that is had success historically, has a lot of name players, but doesn't necessarily justify that every single time they go to a tournament, and in fact often does the opposite of that, but still has this level of entitlement of you're welcome, we gave you this game. That, I think, factors into it. Your fans frequently being awful does not help in terms of the perception of we don't like your fans, so we want to beat you, so your fans are sad. I think that's part of it too. And then just kind of England having the history of invading everybody in the world from a geopolitical level. I think you get some of the negativity that the United States gets as well for both past and current actions. I think all of that comes together to make England probably a team that people enjoy beating more than others.
I would agree with enjoy beating for the historical reasons, both positive in terms of inventing football and negative in terms of colonialism and all that. But I would say it's not like you see England when they go away. It's not a team that gets booed. You know what I'm saying?
Who is the team that you think gets booed though?
The US when it goes to Guatemala.
Yeah, I think that you're looking at that from a CONCACAF. I wouldn't disagree with that. I think that's fair from a CONCACAF perspective.
Yeah,
it would be a fool's errand to argue that the United States is very unpopular in our confederation. But I think if the United States goes to the Netherlands, do they get booed? Probably not.
Yeah, but neither does England.
I think your fans definitely don't have a lot of popular sentiment.
But that's a separate issue. Those drunken idiots are not responsible for the.
I feel like I've touched a nationalist nerve here.
The team is not responsible for the drunken idiot hooligans. Right?
I think also that you all have the Premier League. I think that is another thing that, like, unfairly or unfairly, I think people see it as like, oh, we've beat the Premier League when they beat England, and some of that arrogance of like the Premier League's the best league in the world. Why would you watch anything else?
You've actually only beaten 30% of the Premier League.
That's exactly. So I think it's not fair because it's really like, it's not quite the same with like some of the people that are operating in the Premier League right now. But I think that also factors into it as well.
All right. Well, I'm going to stick to my original answer, which is that there is no one team that everybody hates. It's more like Brazil hates Argentina and Scotland hates England, and it's more regional. And Taylor's answer is...
And Ireland hates England. And Wales kind of hates England.
Well, yeah, there is that. There is that.
But I think you're absolutely correct, though, that it's definitely if you ask a Turk who their least favorite national team is, you're going to get a very different answer than, say, a Greek.
Yeah, well, I mean, they'd each say each other.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at here, man.
But if you ask a French person, they're not going to say Greece or Turkey.
No.
I think that's kind of the point,
They're going to definitely say England and nobody else.
Are you ready for today's final question?
I suppose I am.
Are we running long? Oh, we're under an hour.
Why would you say that? Now I'm going to intentionally talk for like 15 minutes. Let's do it.
Today's final question is from Daniel McCurry. Should FIFA have manager transfer windows like they do for players, so you can only hire and fire managers in the summer and in January?
So I absolutely love this idea, and I want it to be the case, and simultaneously know that it should absolutely not be the case. That is my answer to this.
I'd like to see it tried.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Because it would force clubs to stick with a coach for a certain amount of time. Right?
Yeah.
You could have a horrible start to the Premier League season, and the club has to know we're stuck with this guy until at least January 1st.
I do like the idea with that in mind of like it being the way the transfer bans work, or like a transfer embargo, where it's not that you can't agree to sign, like to with another team to sign a player. It's that you like literally cannot register that player. And I like the idea of like being able to fire a manager, but you cannot register a new manager until the window opens.
Yeah.
So then you're stuck with like interim manager or academy manager, whoever's already there.
So you have
to stick with until such a time as you're allowed to sign a new manager.
So this is one of those weird things.
So much tapping up.
It sounds like we both like this idea, but then if it actually push came to shove and we were on a panel, say we're on the IFAB panel voting for do we implement this or not, would you be brave enough to vote yes?
No, I don't think I would.
Why not? Because I'm not sure I would either, and I'm kind of disappointed in myself.
I mean, because I'm a fan of a team who have sacked more than one manager recently mid-season. Like, I think it is the realistic way the game is now. I'm not saying it's how it should be, but I think it's how it is now, where there's so much money in global soccer, global club soccer at that like you have to be able to pull the trigger, and you can't just get rid of a bunch of players and bring in new players willy-nilly. So it really does come down to, if things obviously aren't working, it has to be the manager that changes. And there's just no way that from a popular or from a political standpoint, you could say no longer can you sack your manager even when you're in the relegation zone, and if Man City are in the relegation zone, they're going to sack Pep Guardiola halfway through the season, even if that seems crazy to say out loud. And to remove that possibility and just be like, nope, suffer and be sad every single weekend, I don't think that works.
And I've just realised what we would create is not a situation where clubs don't talk about sacking managers. You'd have coaches that are all but fired, but they're going to survive for 2 more months as a zombie coach because they're waiting for that January deadline. So you would have these like interminable things of dead men walking on the sidelines every weekend, and it would be horrible to watch.
It would be horrible to watch.
Imagine how sad David Moyes would have looked if he was like having to walk around knowing he was about to be fired.
I'm not sure he could look sadder than he looked, but yes. And then the players would stop playing because they're not listening to him anymore because now like writing's on the wall.
You'd see teams really go off the rails, and they'd all be saying, we're waiting for the new guy in January.
Yeah.
We're not going to play for the next 2 months.
And now there's the famous like headlines now are like a vote of confidence is a vote of no confidence almost automatically. Yeah. And now you wouldn't even have that. It would just be like, oh, they clearly don't believe in this coach even anymore. Whereas maybe like if it was the normal way it works right now, that coach would be actually being given time and they're letting him try to figure it out and hope he can correct it and learn from the mistakes. Whereas in the new system, it would just be like, oh, they just can't fire him yet, so he's done. And you have the players shut down a bit more as a result. Maybe the fans don't care as much anymore, and you start to lose interest a bit.
So we're going to have to file Daniel's idea under brilliant ideas that would never work.
Yes, I like that. I like the idea. What I do like is almost it being you like can't negotiate with a coach until they're free agent, and the only other way to get them is like trades. I kind of like that as like a ridiculous idea that one league should try. Of like, all right, if you want to get like I don't know, if you want to try to get Pep Guardiola like Barcelona again, like you got to trade us Valverde and something else if you want this to happen. I enjoy that idea.
Oh, let's not remake the managerial market.
Come on, it could be fun.
What was fun was answering these 8 listener questions.
I suppose.
If you would like to submit a listener question for us to answer, it's totalsoccershow.com/questions. There's a form to fill out, and it populates this gigantic spreadsheet we've got where we look at all the questions and pick the ones we want to answer. We can also say if you subscribe to the show and you support the show at $10 a month or more, which you can do at totalsoccershow.com/join, we guarantee to answer one of your questions per month.
We do indeed, and we love answering these questions. Like every single question.
These are my favourite shows. Apart from US shows where the US men's national team has won, these are my favourite shows.
Is it just because we get to talk about so many different things? Or because I think it's that, and then for me it's also because it brings up ideas or concepts that I hadn't really thought about. Yeah. And I really do try rather than just there's so many that I read the first time and I'm like, no. And then I like make myself read it again and be like, okay, well that's where that's okay. Yeah. I'm picking it up. And with that in mind, I'm not just trying to pad the runtime. I promised to push us over an hour. But I do think I've been wondering like why England was like an obvious answer to me for Dislike Nation and why it was less so for you. And I'm thinking part of the reason why I think it was an obvious answer for me, I really do think comes down to your supporters. And I think your supporters of like the 1980s. And I think that's a big part because like why did Russian hooligans want to attack English fans? It's because of that reputation of hooliganism. Yeah. And I think that extends to a lot of times if you're playing in Eastern Europe, there's a threat of like, you know, we want to let English fans know that we're the real hooligans. And I think that is probably where a huge part of my answer of it being England comes from, is that sort of little bit of the way the team is covered, but a lot of the way the fans have acted in the past, bleeding into like, oh, there's fan disruption, England might be involved. Yeah,
I mean, we could have a debate of who's got the worst fans, and then England would be in there.
Yeah, I think Russia's up there.
Maybe they should figure it out in some way.
Yeah. Right. Maybe like in some streets in Marseille. Is that what you're getting at, Daryl?
Yeah.
Is that what you want to happen?
I don't want that to happen.
Daryl advocating for open hooliganism.
All right. Thank you to everybody for the questions. Thank you to Taylor for dipping back into that last question.
You're welcome.
All that remains to say is, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Genuinely, right back at you, buddy.
Thank you. Listeners, thank you for listening. We always appreciate it. We will talk to you again soon. I'll be off on Monday. Ryan Bailey will be doing the weekend review with Taylor. I'll also be off on Tuesday because perfect timing. I've got a couple of friends coming into town.
Yay!
I'm going to be up and about and show them all around Richmond. I'm not really able to do much at all.
We could wheel you around or something.
It might come to that. It might come to that. But I'll be back on Wednesday.
Hannibal Lecter style? We give you a face mask and then people don't know quite what to think of you?
Let's do it.
Perfect.
Let's do it. Hopefully I'll be back on the show on Wednesday. And I should be a bit fitter and stronger and a bit less Phoebe from Friends by that time.
You mean sexy?
Yes, exactly.
Isn't that what she says about the voice? Doesn't she say it makes her sexier? There you go. Is that how you feel, Daryl?
Always. Always. Once again, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again very soon.